I'm in this place, the Refuge, which is brand new to me, but has probably... Is this place still magical to you at this point? Because you're a few years into this now.
Yeah, I mean, I think the beauty of it is that I still feel like I'm at the top of discovering what this place is. It changed my life the day I walked into it, and it does in different ways nearly every day, but it's because of the rotation of human beings this is my first day to sit in the Refuge and hear the Blind Boys of Alabama doing their rehearsal while we do this interview. And I mean, it's magic. Yeah.
Well, I'm sitting here with Cory Chisel, and we're talking about this former monastery that is, for all purposes, a castle in the middle of Appleton, Wisconsin, where you're from, that you've inherited?
The right way to say it is sort of took stewardship of. Okay. It's inheritance sort of implies that there was like a family member or something like that. But essentially, this opportunity to be inside this space was handed to me by a group of people that were doing some dynamic work in the town, but really struggling to financially meet the needs of their nonprofit. And the Capuchin monks who were here before are fairly choosy about who was going to come in and use the space for what. So it was a slow 2-year process of deciding if we could, with very limited amount of staff, basically my lady and I and 2 other people could handle the burden, not only financially of raising the money to sustain the place, but then take it to where we wanted it to go, which is happening now while you're here.
We're going to get to the bare qualifications for what's going on here, I guess, but you invite artists in here, and a lot of them at the beginning are your friends, and then sort of branches out very quickly. And you're saying, we have this amazing space for you to create, but also for you to live and just be around the culture and the arts, and they get to record for free. And
you're doing a good job.
Yeah. Oh, I know you've had to tell the story so many times. So, like when our friends were telling me this outside of this interview and everything, it's hard to explain because you don't exactly get it. It's like, I don't know what that means until you're sort of around here, because the community, like saying, okay, we've got this building and you can come here and you can record for free and you can live in a room. That sort of just sets up one thing, but seems to be so much about the community that plays a part in that.
Absolutely.
Is that the vision that you had from the very first day that you wanted? Like, how did you even arrive that that's what this was going to be?
Yeah, well, I knew that this is what artists needed. And as I began this music festival, I figured out that this was the community that was ready to participate with me in that. And it was this is a coming home for me, like the Wandering Son, name implies that I sowed my oats and saw New York and saw LA and all the beautiful cities in Paris. And then you kind of realize that the little community you came from, all the reasons I had been able to get to those sort of far off places was because I had support from this community. Now coming home older, almost 36 years old, you realize that the place you were raised was one of the more special places in the world, and that the giving is different in this community than others. And, there's a lot of people that give charity for some sort of to absolve themselves of their own excesses or something like that. But this community really loves to jump in a different way. The people that are sponsors of these artists, as you witnessed today, they'll be the ones vacuuming, driving the bands, making eggs way late into the afternoon when we wake up. So our donors are not just hand checks and run. They become as much a part of the families as the musicians themselves. And it's that intermixing of what's necessary to create an environment, a habitat, that I think makes this really different.
The gift that you're giving the artist too, because there's such a weight that goes along with recording an album. So I was talking with Robert Ellis about this. Like, when you become a musician, and you want to do it as a career, there's the art side and then there's the business side and the financial side. And that financial side weighs so heavily that it sort of impedes the art side. It gets in the way, right? Because you have to worry about that. Like, how am I going to, the gift that you're giving these artists, because that's what you're essentially saying. Don't worry about that part. Come in here and create.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it changes the paradigm for what it is, and it takes it out of the sort of consumer, that exchange of like, I'm paying for something and making it, and then I'm going to sell it, and we just get completely outside that headspace and go, what's in there that needs to come out? What are we maybe holding on to that is valuable to others, and that we're sort of concealing it because we're worried about this other exchange of like, well, if I take all the time to like discover what's really in there, it's going to cost so much money, and it allows us to experiment a different way. And I didn't come up with this concept. I mean, for generations, and I mean, this used to be the way it was. You know, there would be no Renaissance if there wasn't the patron and the freedom and the time and the space to truly explore the interior, the inner world. You know, and so we, in a tiny little way, that sounds very grandiose, but in our own small little way, we're trying to be like, let's get back to that and see what we could find. You know.
Are you hearing from the artists who have been here how it's affected them in that way?
It was worth it on day one to get involved with this, but you know, with each passing day, to watch this place be adopted by every artist who comes here, and it, you know, they speak of it as theirs, and I know why they feel that way, because they've left a real part of themselves here continually.
And there's got to be a thing, you know, the folks who donated money and time and everything from the community. I mean, there's got to be a sense that you are also able to attract these great artists to the community, and that somehow also affects that out there.
Yeah, well, that's what it is. I mean, every community has an identity, whether it's positive or negative. You know, I mean, and I think our community is starting to see its potential as being known as the place that's that little magic place. And I think there's a castle on the river, and I think it's full of artists, and the music that comes out of it, like, they're getting that the mystique is good for our community. I mean, it creates the right kind of interest in us and we're known for all kinds of other things too. So we were voted recently by Food and Wine magazine the drunkest city in the United States of America. And you know, that I think that for some of us was like, oh yeah, we are. And then on the other hand, we're like, yeah, but we're a lot more than that. And this gives us an opportunity to, you know, Harry Houdini's from this town.
I didn't know that. Harry
Houdini invented most of his first immersion tricks 300 feet from where you're standing in that river. You know, Willem Dafoe is from Appleton. Yeah. We have a history of depth and creativity. And so I think, you know, they've really opened up to the idea of like, why not us? Why couldn't it be here? Why not Appleton, Wisconsin? And I think it's perfect because it's not some place that's, you know, on everybody's radar. It allows this to happen real natural. You know? Yeah.
Well, it's happened to me. You know, it's so quick to fall in love with this place. Now, for you, you know, I talk about the weight off the shoulders of these artists, although I'm going to guess it's not exactly that way for you because you're sort of still responsible for everything going on. I mean,
that's true.
And for your, you know, for your own music. So, you know, your latest record, you and your partner have just released a record, and that was all done here.
Yeah, every bit. But it took us 2 years to release it because of that too. So, yeah, it's not, sometimes we need a refuge from the refuge, but the concept to me is too important for what needs to happen in the world right now. Like, I'm a person that believes that what happens in the world is a product of consciousness, and that you can move that consciousness one way or the other. And I think that that's always the artist's true job, is not to entertain, but to elevate the consciousness to a place where it's finding a more beautiful self, you know, and that mission now seems, I wouldn't say desperate, but we're at that point where we need to sort of step into our role and out of just entertaining, because I feel like things are sliding in a direction that needs to be called back. So, you know, at times my art suffers, but it's all, the way I look at it is it's all a song. This is all this. It's the same.
It's interesting you say that, because when I think of you, of course, you are the traveling musician. You're that artist, and when you have to start thinking about all this stuff, I mean, 2 years for that record, and the whole time you were building this place.
Yeah, well, that was why. I mean, we just couldn't, you know, like he'd be in a take, and then, you know, a boiler breaks or whatever. You know what I mean? But for me, it's like that process has been really beautiful too, to not just like stare narcissistically into your own art constantly, but to like take breaks. And I learned about a whole nother set of gifts, you know, by pouring so much of yourself into really benign things like washing floors or those kind of like activities that there's real
chop wood, carry water.
That's it. Yeah. I mean, and you know, I've kind of been aware of those cliches, but it was really good for me to get back to that, you know. And my lady would laugh if she would heard me say washing floors, because I don't do as much of that as I should be doing. But, you know, I mean, it's the legwork to get everything to run smoothly, but it's really valuable too.
Do you hear that in those songs? Do you hear this, all of that in those songs?
Yeah, and I think that's the thing. I really wanted to start capturing life, and I needed to elevate life to something that was worth capturing. And this project has become synonymous with the art that we make. And, you know, my son learned to walk in that chapel, and, you know, we spent the first 9 months of his life, you know, held up just us in this building together with no money, because we invested it all in this, trying to make this work and, you know, keep a lighthouse lit. And so those records to me they became what I needed music to become again, which is truly special.
I mean, that's a true test of a relationship right there too.
Oh my goodness.
Here you are doing this massive undertaking, a physical and mental undertaking, but also, I mean, creating art with someone that you're intimate with, that is always sort of dangerous a little bit. You know, we know rock history. We've heard those stories.
Yeah.
And all at once, I mean, and it's amazing. You guys are...
I remember when I first called Adriel about this because we were looking at homes in Nashville, and I said, when I get home, I'm going to be staying a couple more days, but there's something I want to talk to you about. And she said, is this something you want to talk to me about or something you already did? And I said, you know me really well.
Yeah.
I said, well, but here's the thing. How do you feel about moving back home to Appleton and living in a monastery with a brand new baby and no money? And, you know, we followed...
And how?
Yeah, we followed each other to the ends of many universes, but this one put a little bit of a test on us.
Yeah. Well, that record is just gorgeous.
Thank you.
And, you know, and it's one thing to hear, you know, the songs on record, and it's another thing to experience them in the place where they were sort of birthed like that.
Well, that's another thing, too. Like, I really fantasized a lot about, you know, the Sam Cooke records from the Copa and all those kind of, like, I love when a record has a location where you're like, truly to understand that record, the best way to do it would be to come here because, like you said, you can speak in broad strokes about there's a church and how it was done, but really it's like to feel connected to it all the way. Hopefully you'll listen to it different just by having been in this space. And I think the more people we can talk into visiting, the more our songs will make sense.
Well, I'm happy to be a part of that part of the story too, to get those people to listen.
Yeah, it's without this, to be honest, we might be whacking away for nothing. So we really appreciate it.
And I'll mention at the end here, because, you know, you've done this also, you've got together with your friends and for a Traveler record. Mm-hmm. Traveler?
Well, it doesn't matter because we don't even know. Everyone asks us, do we have an S on the end of our name? And we're like, we don't remember. So it's Traveler, we think.
Yeah, that's with Robert Ellis and Jonny Fritz. Mm. And again, I guess just having the space and with all of these people coming in and out is such an opportunity for you. I mean, by the end of this, you could have 10 groups.
Yeah, and I love that. To me, I needed it to feel like we were in the garage again. And whoever, you know, when I was younger, whoever was in my house listening to CDs and playing Nintendo, you started a band, you know. Right. And when doing that here, you know, for a lifetime, I mean, the body of work that we may have the opportunity to do, I think that alone will make all the hard parts worth it, you know?
Yeah. Well, I'm in love with it. I'm so impressed with every bit of this.
Thank you. So. Thank you for coming and visiting it.
Yeah. I can't wait to be back. See you next Tuesday.
Yeah. We'll have a bed ready.
Right.